you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Simon Jeffries. I'm the trustee, the treasurer, and the company secretary of Wild Spaces Fund. So you'll understand, therefore, that I do the admin because we're very small. We're all volunteers, but I don't do operations. So our first little slide here, top left-hand corner, we've got a bittern, which is a classical wetland bird, and that's our symbol. Bottom left, that's the interpretation board at our Westbere Reserve, which is in the Stour Valley, not far from Canterbury. And on the right-hand side, I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's Rose Court Marshes, not a million miles away from Slough Fort, a bit further along the Hoo Peninsula. That's pretty quickly a little bit about us. I'm a trustee of several other charities. They're in Scotland. Coincidentally, in a sense, I also helped set up a community broadband community interest company up in the Northwest Highlands of Scotland, and I'm company secretary of a community association up there as well. So I do spread my wings a bit, but I'm the sort of the trustee person at Wild Spaces Fund. Could I have the next slide, please? A little bit about us. We were formed by the Kent Wildfowling and Conservation Association, and about 10 years ago we were made a separate legal entity and registered as a charity, so we got our independent status at that time. We conservation manage some of the land that's owned by the KWCA. We're all about wetland, the marshy, boggy, reedy bits, and improving that is good for wildlife, and it also improves carbon capture because reedy, boggy landscape is exceptionally good at capturing and retaining carbon. Now, KWCA is the biggest wildfowling club in the UK. It's got around 700 members and 13,000 acres of marshland and foreshore are controlled by it, but the KWCA doesn't own all of that by any means. And most of that is along the Thames and Medway estuaries and the Swale. Now, we've got a small annual budget. It comes from the KWCA, or at least it has historically. It's all volunteer effort, and we call on the members of the KWCA to put their backs into shovels, picks, saws, and everything else that we do to improve the land that we are charged with managing. Could I have the next slide, please? Now, it's slightly embarrassing and it's sad that we actually haven't been able to get started on our project for you this year or last year because of COVID. We were looking to bring in young unemployed people. Most of our volunteers are, a bit like Kian was saying, in that vulnerable category. And I've got grey hair, but the hair hasn't quite fallen out yet, but I'm a bit older than I look, I'm told. So we have been stalled. What your grant will enable us to do is do the sorts of things with people that are illustrated in these slides of tasks we've performed heretofore, which is conservation work and bringing them in so they can learn hands-on skills. So you can see here we've had work parties coming in and dealing with access. We've had work parties improving the drainage and the quality of the reed beds. KWCA is one of the largest managers of reed beds in the whole of the UK. So that is something for you to be aware of. Kent has a huge amount of the UK's reed beds. And in the bottom right-hand corner, just to prove that not everything we do is done by ourselves, you might have an idea what that is. That's beavers. And it's a semi-secret, if I could have the next slide, please. That we have the lovely creatures resident on one of our reserves. They've been there for years. They've been left peacefully to get on with their existence. And the local community know they're there. All the relevant government agencies like Natural England and so on and so forth know they're there and come down and visit and are very happy with their presence, as are we. They do make a bit of a muck sometimes of the work that we're trying to do to preserve the particular reserve where they are. So sometimes they can be fighting against us, sometimes they're working for us. So we take the rough with the smooth on that. We've been a fairly inward-looking charity since we were sort of formed, and you were the first grant we'd ever applied for. We were prompted to do that. We got to kick up the backside to do it. And having done that, we got a little bit more bold and a little bit more confident. And as a result of that, we've entered into a partnership which is led by the RSPB with Essex Wildlife Trust, Kent Wildlife Trust, Elmley Nature Reserve over on the Swale, our parent organisation, the KWCA, and ourselves. And we've just won a grant of £1.85 million from something called the Greener Challenge Recovery Fund 2, which is a huge project for landscape scale habitat restoration. As it says, there are 24 sites, over 1,800 hectares. I'm not quite sure how many acres that is. I was brought up in the days of shillings and pence and acres, but it's quite a lot within the Greater Thames Estuary. Yeah.
5,000.
Quite a lot of that is our land. And that'll create 10 full-time equivalent jobs and improve climate resilience. So one of the other critters we've got, not in abundance, but coming back nicely, are water voles in the middle slide there. And the experts say that Pringle tins are one of the best things to put a water vole in when you are sampling and searching and weighing them, because it fits them very nicely. I didn't know that, but that's God's honest truth, I'm told. And on the right-hand side there, you can see that that's a reed bed. And that's one that's been partially managed. As you can see, they need cutting because fire is a risk with these things, and that has been a problem in the past, particularly in dry summers. So we do need to do that sort of work. But that's pretty much an example of where we are, what we do, how your grant has stimulated us to do bigger and better things and be more outward looking. We've got 6 reserves that we manage. They're going up to 9. And you can see that with your money, we'll be bringing in young people from Medway and getting them involved. And it may well be that they will be involved in work that is part of this Greener Thames project. But that's for those doing the operational side of things rather than me to deal with. So we'd like to thank you. We're very sorry that we haven't been able to do your project, but we are getting stuck into that now. And one of the reasons we haven't been able to get stuck into it is the guy who's going to be leading the organisation of that side of things is the leader of Medway Council, who has all the contacts that are needed to get those youngsters in. And of course, he's been very busy sorting out Medway Council and leading their efforts, as well as COVID being a problem for the particular things we were thinking of doing. So thank you very much. And again, an apology that we haven't been able to deliver on our equation yet.